My wife calmly informed me that after work tonight, she was going out and likely wouldn't return until the following day. It was Friday morning, and her speech was delivered with such poise and speed that I immediately felt there was nothing I could say to change things. She assured me that she still loved me, but her eyes had taken on a distant, wandering look. This was my first experience confronting marital infidelity. It's a theme I'd seen often in movies, books, plays, and even in the gossip I'd overheard from both the betrayed and the betrayers, interpreting their real-life dramas. I listened to her carefully crafted words about how I was strong enough to handle it, about the unfairness of not having time to live fully before we got married, how humans aren't designed to be monogamous, that society's rules around love are too strict, and that it's just love. She promised to be more attentive to my needs in the future if only I allowed her to do this. With a soft sigh separating her nonsense from my brewing response, she forged ahead with more clichés. How I had no choice, how she could do whatever she wanted with her body, how life is short and she deserved to experience all the pleasures it had to offer, even the need to experiment with different colors, shapes, and tastes. Of course, her selective palette didn't seem to include brain size or the size of anyone's bank account. She was solely focused on the physical. Now, I don't mean to imply I was lacking in any of those areas. In fact, is there a humble way to declare that I'm at least of average intelligence with a considerable fortune? Probably not. But suffice it to say, I'm a rocket scientist, and my career has made me incredibly wealthy. My wife certainly had no complaints in that department. When she finished her well-rehearsed speech, I could have responded with brute force, a huge beast fueled by rage. The anger within me was palpable. I could have easily slipped into the role of Ahab, obsessed with exacting revenge like a king with a superiority complex, but I knew how that story ends, in destruction. No, I had a better model to follow, courtesy of Herman Melville. Though the message of his tale had long been elusive to me, it now came into sharp focus as my wife leaned in for a goodbye kiss. At that moment, I silently thanked Melville for the lesson of Bartleby. There are moments in life so absurd that all you can do is laugh. You're in such shock that your brain is processing things faster than it can form words. My wife's jaw dropped, her mouth grotesquely hanging open. The urge to launch into a tirade about morality, vows, and the meaning of love or threats of retribution boiled within me. But somehow, all I said was, I'd rather not. Often, people underestimate a quiet strength, self-control. There is power in restraint. I'd rather not was my way of asserting control over the situation. Naturally, after that, I was met with a fresh rant about how I wasn't respecting her needs, how my resentment was childish, and that I'd have to accept her decision or lose her altogether. I'd rather not, I repeated, noticing a slight crack in her confidence. She faltered, though she tried her best to remain resolute. I didn't beg, I didn't threaten, I didn't cry, and I certainly didn't erupt with rage. Then, she tried negotiating. She promised she wouldn't stay out all night on her first date, offering to come home and assure me of her deep love by letting me reclaim her body. I'd rather not, I replied again. That phrase was my encore. Her demeanor shifted from soft mistress to sharp lawyer, a career she'd never managed to attain, despite her failed attempts to pass the bar exam. I doubt she remembered much from her law school days, except for the prenuptial agreements we all drafted before getting married. At the time, she took it quite seriously, and the contract was signed, notarized, and fully enforceable. So when she launched into another tirade about how, if I wanted a divorce, she'd take my house, my bank account, and my trust fund, leaving me in a home she'd fill with whoever she pleased, my response was simple: I'd rather not. That Friday night, she didn't return for me to reclaim her body. She didn't come home Saturday afternoon, nor Saturday night. It wasn't until Sunday evening, as the sun was setting, that she finally dragged herself back home, looking like she'd been battered by the elements. She dropped her bag on the patio, right next to the grill where I was cooking a ribeye. I didn't even bother to look in her direction. I suppose you'd rather not kiss me now, right? She asked. I focused on turning the corn on the grill, applying more marinade to the sizzling meat. Would you mind cooking me one of those? I'd rather not, I replied, without turning around. Of course, she sighed. Should have seen that coming. Are you ever going to say anything besides I'd rather not? It gets old, you know. I turned toward her, about to respond, but she cut me off. No, don't. Don't say anything. I'm tired. I know what the real punishment is. It's better if you just don't say anything at all. She was right. It was going to be a long night. We'd have to talk, and I would need to say something eventually. Is that really it? She asked. You're going to file for divorce after everything we've been through? 2 years of dating in college, 3 while I was in law school, and 2 more of marriage? 7 years, and you're ready to throw it all away because I needed something else? I remained silent as she continued. It's been eating at me for years. I thought I could bury it when I married you. I love you. I'll always love you. But I couldn't be near another man without wondering what it would be like. I needed to know how it felt to be wanted instead of cherished. To experience the difference. I wanted to be that girl on the cover of a romance novel, where the rugged cowboy takes what he wants or where the lord of the manor claims his right over the lowly peasant girl. She paused, tears welling in her eyes. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. You're a wonderful husband, a great lover, but I should have tried more men. Please, don't just stand there in silence. Say something. I placed the grilled corn on a toasted bun, topped it with another grilled peach, and for the first time since she returned, I looked directly at her. I prefer not to do that. No, baby, don't do that. Don't be so cold to me. Yell at me, threaten me, hit me, just don't ignore me. I know I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I'll do anything for you, just take me back. I'd rather not. Things escalated after that. No, I didn't grill her a steak, though for a moment I considered completely burning something for her. In the days that followed, she tried to talk, but every request she made was quietly met with the same answer. I'd rather not do that. She asked what I would prefer to do instead, and I simply shrugged. I didn't leave the room when she tried to talk to me, nor did I ask her what had happened. It was clear she was desperate to get back in my good graces. The following Friday, she came home a little late, talking a mile a minute about happy hour with her co-workers where she swore she'd only been drinking and laughing. Then she noticed there was nothing on the table, and I was getting dressed to leave the house. What's going on? Are we going somewhere? Oh, wait, you're not taking me with you, are you? Is this my punishment? Are you going back to my place? I shook my head, gave her the usual answer, I'd rather not, and left. That night, I went out for dinner with my parents, who were in town for the weekend. I had put them up at the Hilton by the river because I didn't want them to get dragged into our drama. They already knew everything that was going on and were just happy to have a lovely evening with me, dining on a river cruise. I got home around 10:30, still looking sharp. My wife, however, was in tears. I went straight to bed. I don't know what was going through her head, but the next morning, I woke up to the smell of breakfast. She didn't ask me any questions before speaking this time. Last night was awful, she said. You left without me, and I was stuck here, home alone. I couldn't stop thinking about you being out in town with someone else. I felt so horrible. Now I understand how you must have felt when I was gone all weekend. If I ask you something, will you answer honestly? Were you with another woman? Since I had dinner with both my parents and my mom is definitely a woman, I answered truthfully, yes. Her face reflected a storm of emotions. On one hand, the idea that I had been with another woman filled her with anxiety, but on the other hand, she realized something new. I was talking. It was progress. I ate the breakfast she had prepared, then grabbed my golf clubs and headed out. My father and I hit the course, and despite being in his 40s, he was playing like he was in his prime. At one point, my dad even won a community service award for coaching Special Olympics for years, later serving as the state team director. We talked about everything except my marriage. I got home just in time to shower and get dressed for dinner. As I came down the stairs, my wife caught sight of me heading toward the garage, dressed in my tuxedo. The look on her face, her jaw dropping in shock, was almost priceless. She must be really special to get a night that warrants a tuxedo, she said. I nodded. Honey, no one compares to you when you dress like that. All of our anniversary dinners have been unforgettable. She's a lucky girl, whoever she is. I don't suppose you want to share anything with me? I'd rather not. Well, I get it, she replied, almost sadly. I realize I messed up. I tossed you aside and spent the weekend humiliating you. I should never have done that. I'll always regret it. She started to tell me about her own weekend. Friday's date took me to Wendy's for a burger before a concert. I got all dressed up because he said we had great seats. You saw me. Turns out our seats were so far from the stage I couldn't even see the singer with binoculars. And I had to buy my own beer, because I was driving, my car, my gas, and I bought dinner too. My first big adventure turned out to be with the cheapest douchebag in the state. On the way back, he started groping me. When we got near our neighborhood, I waited for a red light, jumped out of the car, and went to Maguire's Lounge, where a blues band was playing. The jerk tried to follow me, but Eric, the bouncer, stopped him when I told him the guy was being a creep. Can you believe this? He was following me like I'd promised him anything. At the lounge, I ran into a guy I knew from work. We hung out, and I ended up driving him home because he was too drunk. But when we got there, he passed out, and I had to sleep on his couch. I woke up to him trying to make a move on me, and I just told him he could never make it up to me. That's when I got really stupid. Instead of realizing what I had back home and coming back to you, I decided to reclaim my femininity and sexuality. She continued, I went to the bar, thinking I was going to hook up with some guy, but his wife showed up. I slapped him and said, so, you're married? Ironically, I was still wearing my rings. Then I went to the Clam Shack bar, where a sweet older guy flirted with me until his grandkids ran up, yelling grandpa. So I ended up renting a room in a motel, drank wine on the balcony, and overheard a group of women talking about their own disastrous dating lives. She paused, then added, I thought about you all night, but I didn't come home right away. I stayed, thinking, until I fell asleep. I woke up on that balcony, sunburned, hungover, and feeling absolutely miserable. I checked out late, showered, and finally came home. Honey, I left our house fully intending to cheat on you, but I didn't. The universe was on your side. It made it clear I'm meant to be with you. Please forgive me. Please let me still be your wife. Let's move past this and be happy again. Her eyes filled with tears. I felt sympathy for her. What I didn't feel was love. I looked into her eyes, the same eyes of the woman I had loved for so long, and gave her my answer. I would have preferred not to. Epilogue ***. I didn't tell her that the other woman I was seeing was my mother. I didn't tell her whether or not I believed her sob story about how her weekend adventure had gone sour. I didn't say anything else, really. I simply nodded, said I love you, though I wasn't sure I did anymore. She didn't give up on me immediately, she kept trying to rekindle the relationship. I avoided her by traveling for work or staying late in town. I only responded to her questions with yes or no, never more than that. Eventually, she gave up. We never got divorced, but she moved out and got her own place. I'm not sure what happens next, but I think an ending will come eventually.